The wait is over. Hockey season officially back in session, and it all starts with rookie camp. Who is attending for the Montreal Canadiens this year, and which of those rookies are the ones that we should really keep an eye on? We've got all that and more coming up on today's video. It's the same game, just with some slightly different faces this time around, as the 2024 Montreal Canadiens rookie camp kicked off this week under the tutelage of brand new Laval Rocket head coach Pascal Vincent, as well as his assistant coaches Daniel Jacob, who is back in the fold, Martin Laperriere, who has stuck around from JF Ul's administration, as well as Marco Marciano in the goaltending department. 23 players were invited to this year's Montreal Canadiens camp, including about 14 of them who have been drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. And on today's video, we're going to give you all of the ins and outs of what to expect during rookie camp this year, give you a rundown of who is attending rookie camp this year, and then I'm going to give you my 5 prospects to really watch during the rookie camp and the prospect showcase games being played later this weekend. Now, the rookies actually reported to Brassard on Wednesday this week for off-ice training, their medicals, and their fitness testing. Then on Thursday and Friday, everything shifts to on-ice work, and they'll have full mornings of on-ice training at the CN Sports Complex out at Brassard, followed by media availabilities. All of that gearing up for this weekend's 2 scrimmages against the Toronto Maple Leafs rookies. That's the prospect showcase that's taking place at the Bell Center at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, both on Saturday and Sunday, where the Habs rookies will face off against the Leafs rookies, and we'll see how everyone looks in game action. Rookie camp will then sort of wind down on Monday with the Canadiens' annual golf tournament. Of course, at that point, some of the Habs veteran players will have started to report for training camp, and so they will also be in attendance for the annual golf tournament. And before you know it, training camp will be here next week. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Today we're focused on rookie camp. So who is there? There's 14 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders. The prospects that you'll be familiar with in the forwards who were invited to camp: Owen Beck, Jared Davidson, Sean Farrell, Emil Heineman, Riley Kidney, Philip Meshar, as well as Luke Tuck and Florian Jackeye. On the back end, the blue line, you've got Adam Engstrom, Lane Hudson, Logan Mailloux, Owen Protz, and David Reinbacher. There are also some tryouts who are thrown in the mix as well, and we wish them the best of luck. In terms of my assessment of the Canadiens' rookie camp roster this year, I'm kind of breaking this into 2 categories. I did promise you that I'm going to give you 5 players who I am most keen to watch this rookie camp in terms of who might compete for an NHL spot once things advance to Canadiens training camp. But before we get there, I first want to shift attention and focus over to some guys who I definitely want to pay attention to how they perform during rookie camp, but they're just not ones I believe are going to make the NHL roster out of camp this year. And I'm going to start with a defenseman, and that's going to be David Reinbacher. Okay, yes, David Reinbacher is not part of my 5 players that I'm watching in terms of who's going to compete to get an NHL spot. That is not a knock on David Reinbacher. In fact, I have been long in saying over the summer on our podcast and even late last season as the season was wrapping up that I believe that David Reinbacher was going to have a strong camp this year, and I believe that he's going to show some great progression, but I also believe that he is going to start the season in Laval. He has more seasoning that needs to be done at the AHL level, but I do believe he could be one of the first, if not the first, blue line call-up from Laval. I think we see him get called up maybe around mid-November, unless there's an injury that precipitates that before that. But I think in the regular timeline, maybe we see him anytime from mid-November to mid-December get a call up to see, okay, let's test David Reinbacher at the NHL level and see, kind of get a measuring stick of where his development's at in terms of transitioning his program from the AHL to the NHL. So I'm very much am looking forward to seeing how David Reinbacher looks in this camp, if he has taken the necessary steps forward this summer in his training over in Europe. And I certainly am looking forward to his kickoff this year, but likely with the Laval Rocket to begin with. The other players that I'm really focusing on in this rookie camp, who I don't necessarily think are going to compete for an NHL spot right out of the gate, but who I do think are going to be key prospects to watch this season in Laval and could turn into call-ups for Montreal, all are in the forward core. And we're going to start with Jared Davidson. Jared Davidson, again, took some steps forward last season with Laval. I expect he's going to continue to do that, and I'm excited to see what this kid can do if he really steps up to his full potential. In the 38 games he played at center for Laval last year, he had 11 goals and 5 assists for 16 points. That doesn't sound like he's knocking things out of the park, but it was his play away from the puck as well. I think Jared Davidson is starting to become a more complete player. He's getting a bit more responsible defensively, and I think that this season could be a big step forward for him. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on him at camp. Also, Riley Kidney. Riley Kidney is one of those sneaky players that you don't hear a whole lot about. You might not even see him a whole lot in a game in Laval, but he really started to also fine-tune some of those small details in his game last year that made him very effective on the ice. In his 65 games played last year, 7 goals and 13 assists. He also started to come on a bit more towards the end of the season, and I want to see if he's able to keep that consistency over the summer and come in kind of picking up where he left off last year. One of the guys that I'm very anxious to see how he does this year is Philippe Méchard, because this is the first year that the organization does not have the option to send Philippe Méchard back to the CHL. He will not be going back to the OHL. He'll be staying with Laval this year, and this will be the first year for him to actually be able to prove the success that I've had in junior can translate into the pro leagues. Well, now is the time and now is the opportunity for him to say, okay, I did all of my seasoning in junior, and this is why I'm now going to be a really effective prospect for you. I think Philippe Méchard could have a good breakout season if he remains competitive and if he can take all of those skills that he shows off in the OHL and apply them to AHL hockey, which is a completely different ballgame. The AHL has a very different level of competition, a very different level of physicality, and so it's going to be a bit of a transition, but I am excited to finally get to see Philippe Méchard sink his teeth into the American Hockey League and see what he can do this year. The other two forwards that I am excited to watch during this camp and into the beginning of the season are two guys who showed up for Laval at the very end of the season last year after their seasons in the NCAA and junior were over, but didn't really get a chance to get their feet too wet. And that is Luke Tuck and Florian Jacki. And I am looking forward to watching both of these guys. Florian Jacki, obviously getting the Jacki family even more involved with the Montreal Canadiens organization is fun. But aside from that, Florian has the potential to be a dynamic forward for the Laval Rocket. In his 63 games with Brantford in the OHL last year, 34 goals, 31 assists for 65 points. And that's not including the 5 points that he put up in the playoffs last year. Now, he only played 3 games for Laval last year, didn't have any points in those games, but that's okay. He got his feet wet, and now he kind of got a taste for what AHL hockey is going to be like. And I am very excited to see what this young man does in his rookie campaign in the AHL with Laval. I think it could be very exciting to watch, as can be what happens with Luke Tuck. Luke Tuck finished out his NCAA season with Boston University last year. In his 38 games there, 9 goals, 19 assists for 28 points. The NCAA system, I have said this many times throughout the years, it is a terrific system to prepare hockey players to make the jump to pro hockey. The NCAA is very competitive, is very tough, and Boston University has a terrific program. Luke Tuck is going to be another one that I can't wait to see what his transition to the pro leagues looks like. But who do I think is going to be in the mix for not only succeeding and breaking through and standing out at rookie camp, but also then moving on to the Montreal Canadiens training camp and potentially competing for a spot on the NHL opening night roster? Well, I've got 5 names for you. And first, we're going to talk about the 3 that everybody's talking about, starting with the forwards Owen Beck. This is Owen Beck's season to prove why he should be part of the conversation when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and their forward lines. Throughout his junior hockey season last year, whether it was with Peterborough or whether it was Saginaw, whether it was regular season or playoffs or the Memorial Cup, Owen Beck put up 57 points last season, 16 goals with Peterborough, 18 goals in the regular season with Saginaw, another 4 goals in the OHL playoffs with Saginaw, and another 4 goals with Saginaw in the Memorial Cup. Owen Beck absolutely dominated, and he has been dominating at the junior level. Now I expect him to come to Montreal Canadiens camp. You've heard him every year at rookie camp, even his interviews. His game has gotten more mature. He himself has gotten more mature. His interviews have displayed the growing maturity that he's got. And I fully expect him to come into this camp ready to dominate the forwards for the rookies and ready to prove to the Montreal Canadiens, you're going to want to keep me around in training camp. You're going to want to keep me deep into training camp. And I am here to fight for one of those spots that you've potentially are trying to make a decision on who goes to Laval and who stays with Montreal. So Owen Beck, definitely one to watch. Lane Hutson and Logan Mailloux. These two, it's well known, they are battling to start on the Canadiens' blue line. Logan Mailloux had a tremendously successful rookie campaign with Laval last year, absolutely dominated his position not only on the team, but in the league as well. He was Laval's all-star last year in his rookie season, as well as being in the all-rookie conversation after the season was over. Logan Mailloux is absolutely ready to compete for an NHL roster spot on the defense. Lane Hutson is one of those really special talents on the blue line who is also right there, ready to make a difference. A teammate of Luke Tuck's at Boston University, Lane Hutson in his 38 games with BU, 15 goals, 34 assists for 49 points. That is a very offensive defenseman. Can he also defend as well as he can produce? That is going to be the test for him, but I do believe he and Logan Mailloux are absolutely head-to-head and head and shoulders above the rest of the competition when it comes to who on the defense is going to compete for a roster spot with the Montreal Canadiens. These two are going to be exceptionally exciting to watch. And no, I did not forget that Adam Engstrom is going to be in the mix as well with Logan Mailloux and Lane Hutson. Adam Engstrom, of course, was playing in the Swedish Hockey League last year, 51 games, 4 goals, 18 assists. He is another defenseman that's going to come in with a completely different background, having played all of this time in Europe in the Swedish Hockey League. And he's going to be another one that could throw a wrench into the mix in this competition for sure. So my other 2 players to round out the 5, Owen Beck, Lane Hutson, Logan Mailloux, the other 2 players are, I believe, guys who this is kind of the first one, it's a show me what you can do, because Emil Heinelman was acquired via a trade with Calgary 2 years ago. And part of that was because he hadn't quite lived up to his potential in Calgary, so he was a trade chip at that point. And he hasn't quite made that jump yet within the Montreal Canadiens organization, but I think that he's very close. I think he's on the cusp. He played 48 games with Laval last year, 15 goals, 14 assists for 29 points, and he started to really become one of the players who could be trusted offensively and defensively. Emil Heineman has a strong game, and I think he's starting to be at that point where he has to prove that he was worth acquiring in the trade. This is the time for him to start showing my potential is real. And I feel like the progression that he took and the steps that he took with Laval last year put him on the right path to do that. He just has to grasp the opportunity and step up and say, here I am. you can't take your eyes off of me. So Emil Heineman is definitely one of my top 5 prospects that I'm watching at Canadiens rookie camp this year, just because this is a bit of a make or break camp for him this year to really prove he's ready to take the next step forward. And finally, I believe that Sean Farrell is also going to come in with a lot of competitiveness this year. Sean Farrell turned a significant corner last year. In fact, he was just about at the same pace for production as Emil Heineman was last year. Sean Farrell played 49 games with the Laval Rocket, 9 goals, 19 assists for 28 points. They played essentially the same amount of games, and they've put up essentially the same amount of points. The only difference is that Emil Heineman is a little more balanced between goals and assists, whereas Sean Farrell is a bit more of the setup guy. He's got more on the assist side, but Sean Farrell really started to, you could see his confidence growing as the season wore on last year, and as he started to be put in positions to succeed, positions of more responsibility, and was getting some trust from the coaching staff and from his teammates, you could see him flourish under that. And I think he's going to come in. I don't know that he's going to win an NHL job, but I think he's going to come in with the mindset that he could. And I fully expect to see a competitive Sean Farrell in this camp. And so that's why he's the one who rounds out my top 5 prospects to watch at this year's Canadiens rookie camp. I'm also really excited to watch Pascal Vincent and crew handle these rookies during this camp. Our first look at how Pascal Vincent is going to be as a coach, and he has reaffirmed this week that his focus and his mandate is on development. He has thankfully repeated what we've been wanting to hear an AHL coach in the Canadiens organization say for a few years now, and that is, we are going to put young players in the positions of big importance, of responsibility, to test them, to help them learn, to allow them to make mistakes. Development is going to come first. And so I'm excited to see how that starts to unfold right now in rookie camp. And while the competition for forwards might not be as intense because the forward lines for the Canadiens are probably mostly in place, it is the defense where I think this year's training camp is going to be incredibly intense. And I think the competition is going to be high. There's going to be a lot of talent. There's going to be a lot of skill, and it's going to come down to who wants it the most. It's no secret the Canadiens have an absolute plethora of prospects on the blue line. And I have actually gone through a lot of the ones who are pretty much ready to start being in the conversation to make the jump to the NHL, and what their likelihood is this season of playing in the AHL a little bit more, or really starting to vie for an NHL job. And you can hear all about that if you watch this video right here. And then next week, come back when we start talking about actual NHL training camp for the Montreal Canadiens.